Have you ever felt invisible in a room full of people? What if the disrespect you're tolerating is slowly stealing your peace? Sometimes the loudest battles are fought in silence. You can't heal what you keep pretending isn't there. One of the most dangerous patterns we fall into is not loud disrespect, but the subtle kind that seeps into our lives quietly. It's not always someone shouting at you or blatantly putting you down. Sometimes it comes wrapped in courteous language and smiling faces. It looks like people constantly interrupting you, disregarding your ideas, or showing up late, like your time doesn't matter. You don't even notice at first. You explain it away. You make excuses for them. But slowly, without realizing it, you begin to shrink. You begin to accept crumbs and call it a feast. You normalize behavior that is anything but normal. That's the thing about consistent disrespect. It conditions you. It convinces you that maybe you're too sensitive, that you're making a mountain out of a molehill. But deep down, a quiet voice keeps whispering, "This doesn't feel right." And that voice, that's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's God nudging your spirit, telling you this isn't how it's supposed to be. God did not breathe life into you so you could walk through the world wondering if you matter. He didn't create you to constantly beg for the bare minimum from people who don't even recognize your worth. There's a divine dignity stitched into your soul, and when you ignore disrespect, you risk unthreading it piece by piece. Recognizing the signs isn't about becoming bitter or prideful. It's about embracing truth. It's about understanding that when someone repeatedly dismisses your presence, mocks your dreams, or makes you feel invisible, that isn't love. It's not friendship. It's not family. It's not anything that honors God. And the length of time you've known them, that doesn't excuse the harm. Longevity is not a license for disrespect. The enemy thrives in confusion. He wants to see you doubting your voice, questioning your place, believing that your pain isn't valid. But your pain is real, and it matters. The confusion you feel isn't random, it's strategic. That's why clarity is your weapon. It's why you must ask God to reveal not who people pretend to be, but who they are when you're no longer useful to them. He will show you, and it might break your heart, but it will also set you free. We often hold on to the idea of who someone used to be, the person who once encouraged us, supported us, made us laugh. But sometimes that version is gone. And who they are now. If they can't even treat you with common respect, if they can't celebrate your wins or sit with you in your losses, it's time to take a step back. Not out of hatred, but out of love. Love for yourself, love for your peace, love for your purpose. You are a temple. You were designed to hold light. And every time you allow disrespect to linger, you're allowing shadows to take up space where radiance was meant to shine. Let's get something straight. Humility is not the same as humiliation. Jesus showed us what humility looks like, washing the feet of his disciples, loving without condition. But he also knew when to walk away. He didn't beg to be understood. He didn't chase after hearts that had already hardened. So if the Son of God didn't plead for approval, why should you? Some of you are bending over backward for people who wouldn't stretch an inch for you. You're pouring from a cup that's already empty, hoping that this time they'll see your worth. But they won't. Not because you're not valuable, but because their eyes are clouded by their own wounds. That doesn't mean you shrink yourself. That means you stand. That ache you've been feeling, the heaviness in your chest when you enter certain rooms, the silence after you open your heart and it lands with a thud, that's your spirit alerting you. It's telling you that this environment is not safe, that you were not built to survive in a space that continuously crushes your soul. Your value is not up for debate. It's not based on your productivity, your perfection, or your proximity to anyone. It's inherent. God said you are fearfully and wonderfully made, not marginally and occasionally respected. That's not just a verse to quote, that's a standard to live by. But here's the challenge. The moment you begin to awaken to the disrespect, resistance will follow. Doubt will creep in. You'll wonder if you're overreacting. You'll feel guilty for setting boundaries. People will call you difficult, distant, or dramatic. Let them. You are not called to live in emotional poverty. You are not meant to stay trapped in cycles that drain your spirit. Confronting the truth may be uncomfortable, but staying silent is far more dangerous. The longer you tolerate the mistreatment, the more you teach others that you're okay with it. And you're not. Sometimes the most loving, courageous thing you can say is, no more. Not from a place of anger, but from a place of clarity. You've seen enough. You've felt enough. You know too much now to pretend you don't. You don't belong in rooms where your soul is unwelcome. You don't belong in relationships that constantly require you to prove your worth. And you certainly don't belong in any space that makes you feel like love is something you have to earn. And yes, it will be hard. Walking away from people you once loved, once leaned on, once believed in, that hurts. But staying in places that disrespect you hurts more. You just get used to the pain. And then one day you look up and you don't recognize yourself anymore. So let today be the day you stop explaining your worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding it. Let today be the day you reclaim your space, your peace, your voice. Not by shouting, not by lashing out, but by standing firm in the quiet confidence of someone who knows they are deeply loved by the one who matters most. But once you begin reclaiming your voice, the battlefield changes. The enemy shifts tactics. No longer relying on obvious insults, he leans into subtle manipulation. You'll feel the tension not just in words but in atmospheres. Places where your joy dims, where your laughter feels forced, where your presence is met with discomfort instead of welcome. These are not coincidences, they are signs. When your spirit no longer feels safe, that's not drama, that's discernment. And the truth is, not everyone who smiles at you wishes you well. Not everyone who invites you in intends to honor your presence. Some people just want access, not connection. They want your energy, your support, your kindness, but not your heart. They want to benefit from your light without ever reflecting it back. That's not love. That's consumption. You are not here to be consumed. You are not a resource for toxic souls to drain and discard. You are sacred ground, and sacred ground deserves sacred treatment. When you allow people to repeatedly cross your boundaries without consequence, you're not being kind, you're being complicit. You're agreeing silently to be mistreated. And that's not humility. That's self-abandonment. The Holy Spirit doesn't nudge you for no reason. That discomfort? It's divine alertness. That quiet sorrow you feel around certain people? It's a signal God is trying to show you who they really are, not to hurt you, but to heal you. You can't heal in the same space that broke you, and you cannot grow where you're constantly being diminished. Walking away is hard, but not walking away costs more. You lose your voice, your clarity, your identity. You start shaping yourself to fit their comfort, molding your truth into something more palatable so they don't leave. But here's what no one tells you. If you have to change your essence just to stay connected, that connection is already broken. God didn't call you to survive in shadows. He called you to live in light. And light doesn't apologize for shining. You don't need to beg people to treat you right. You don't need to write essays explaining your worth. You are not a debate to be won or a project to be fixed. You are a living declaration of God's love, and your peace is not up for negotiation. It's sacred. And anything sacred must be protected. Not with violence, not with vengeance, but with quiet strength. That kind of strength that says, I will not be moved. That kind of strength that walks away without slamming doors, that stands tall without shouting, that says no more, with a calm that shakes the room more than any scream ever could. Some people will only understand your value when they no longer have access to it. Let them learn. Let them miss the kindness they took for granted. Let them wrestle with the silence that once was filled with your encouragement. You don't have to teach them through anger. Sometimes absence is the greatest teacher. And when they say you've changed, agree. Say, yes, I've changed, I've grown, I've healed. I've decided to stop offering myself to environments that don't know how to handle what I carry. Because here's the truth. The right people won't make you question your worth. They won't make you fight for basic respect. They'll honor your presence, celebrate your victories, and hold space for your pain. That's the kind of company you deserve. Not those who tolerate you, but those who treasure you. Not those who need reminders to be decent, but those who reflect God's love in how they treat you. And yes, they exist. But you'll never meet them if you keep holding on to those who only drain you. Every minute spent trying to earn respect from the wrong people is a minute stolen from the purpose God has placed in front of you. You weren't created to live in cycles of emotional starvation. You were made to thrive in peace, to rise in grace, to walk in rooms knowing that you belong, not because someone approved you, but because God already called you. This world will tell you to prove yourself, to clap back, to show them. But Jesus didn't live like that. When they mocked him, he stayed silent. Not because he lacked power, but because he had purpose. He knew that validation from people meant nothing compared to the mission he carried. And you too carry something sacred. Don't cheapen it by giving it away to those who can't even see it. Some battles are not yours to fight. They're distractions, noise, designed to pull you off course. And you'll know you've matured when the need to respond is replaced by the resolve to preserve your peace. When people push your buttons and you don't flinch. When they provoke you and you don't engage. When they try to twist your words and you just smile, not from arrogance but from alignment. Alignment with the truth that your peace is more valuable than their drama. That your mission is too important to get lost in petty storms. So the next time disrespect shows up, not in screams but in silence, not in insults but in indifference, take note. And instead of reacting, redirect. Instead of fighting, refocus. Guard your energy like the treasure it is. Because the more you protect your peace, the more powerful you become. And eventually you'll find that the greatest strength is not in proving them wrong, but in continuing to rise, even when they hoped you'd fall. That's not weakness. That's divine resilience. That's what it looks like when God's hand is on your life, steady, silent, unshakable. There's a power that comes with choosing silence, not as a form of weakness, but as a declaration of strength. Because when someone tries to draw you into their chaos and you don't react, you've already won. You've proven that your peace is not for sale, that your worth is not negotiable, that your identity is not tied to their ability to recognize it. And yet, everything in you might still want to respond, to explain, to defend, to make sure they know how wrong they were. That's human, but it's also a trap. Because the more you explain yourself to someone who's already decided to dishonor you, the more energy you waste. And the more energy you waste, the further you drift from your purpose. There's a cost to every conversation, every reaction, every emotional investment. And the real question is it worth the price? Is the momentary satisfaction of saying your piece worth the lingering weight it leaves behind? Most times it isn't. Because people who are committed to misunderstanding you will twist even your clearest words. They're not seeking truth. They're seeking control. When you walk into a space and feel like you have to dim your light just to keep the peace, that's not peace. That's suppression. And it's slowly killing the version of you that was born to shine. God did not form you in secret and crown you with purpose so you could spend your life shrinking in front of small minds. No. He called you to walk boldly, humbly, and with sacred clarity. And clarity often requires boundaries. Not the kind built out of bitterness, but the kind formed from wisdom. The kind that says, I love you, but I love me too. That kind that understands not everyone deserves a front row seat to your life. And that access, once granted freely, now requires discernment. Because not everyone who walks with you is walking for you. Some people are only there for what you give, not who you are. And the moment you stop giving, their respect vanishes. That's not a relationship, that's a transaction. And you were never meant to live transactionally. You are not an ATM of emotional labor. You are not a doormat for misplaced frustrations. You are a child of God, clothed in dignity, wrapped in grace, and filled with divine purpose. When someone disrespects you, they're not just breaking social codes, they're violating sacred ground. And your job is not to fix them. Your job is to protect the temple, your heart, your mind, your spirit. Let them think what they want. Let them spread their version of the story. Your peace does not depend on public opinion. It depends on personal alignment with God's truth. You don't need to yell to be heard. You don't need to fight to prove you're strong. The greatest strength is often seen in restraint, in the moments you could react, but instead you rise. In the spaces where you could curse, but instead you pray. In the situations where you could lash out, but instead you leave in peace. That's not cowardice. That's character. And that kind of character cannot be taught. It's forged. Forged in the fire of experience. Strengthened by the scars of betrayal. cemented in the presence of God, where you learn that your value is unshaken by rejection, that your joy is untouchable by opinion, that your spirit is guarded not by pride but by peace. And peace isn't passive. Peace is powerful. It's the inner knowing that no matter what they say or do, you remain grounded, unbothered, anchored in truth. Because some people will only stop pushing your limits when they finally realize there's a line, and you're the one who draws it. Don't wait for them to change before you choose healing. Don't wait for an apology to start moving forward. Some apologies will never come, and even if they did, they wouldn't fix what their actions already broke. That's okay. Closure isn't something they give you, it's something you decide. A decision to stop allowing someone else's actions to dictate your worth. Forgiveness is not letting them off the hook, it's freeing yourself from the chain. It's saying, I release this not because you earned it, but because I deserve peace. You can forgive someone and still never let them close again. That's not hate, that's health. And yes, people will call you cold, they'll accuse you of changing, they'll whisper that you're being distant. Let them. That's the echo of lost control. That's what happens when someone no longer has the access they used to abuse. That's not your burden to carry. That's the weight of their own discomfort with your growth. Because growth always exposes. It reveals who's really for you and who was just comfortable with the old version of you, the one who tolerated too much, gave too freely, stayed too long. But you've evolved. You've remembered who you are. And now your presence is no longer a free-for-all. Now your spirit has standards. And those standards, they're not too much. They're not excessive. They are necessary. Because without them, you're left vulnerable to repeat the same painful cycles again and again, convincing yourself that if you just love harder, forgive faster, endure longer, it'll all get better. But love doesn't fix what someone is unwilling to acknowledge. Forgiveness doesn't restore what someone keeps breaking. And endurance without discernment becomes self-inflicted suffering. You don't need to suffer to prove you're loyal. You don't need to bleed to prove you care. Jesus already did that. And his sacrifice wasn't so you could stay bound, it was so you could live free. Free from manipulation, free from emotional blackmail, free from the belief that your kindness must come at the cost of your peace. So breathe, step back, recenter, not in bitterness, not in arrogance, but in holy confidence, knowing that the same God who placed value in you will honor your choice to protect it, that he will surround you with people who don't just respect your boundaries, but celebrate your growth. People who don't need to be reminded to love you well, because loving well is who they are. And until they come, walk boldly, not looking back, not second-guessing, just moving forward, head high, heart whole, spirit steady. Because the ones who can't respect you never deserve the version of you who kept trying anyway. Let them go, let God in, and let peace lead the way. There comes a moment in every journey where you stop asking why they treated you that way and start asking what you're going to do about it. Because reflection is valuable, but staying stuck in the same emotional loop is not. And sometimes, the most powerful decision you can make is to stop replaying the pain and start rewriting the future. Not because it didn't hurt, it did. Not because they deserve forgiveness, maybe they don't, but because you deserve peace. And peace can't grow in soil constantly churned by old wounds. You've been faithful, you've been patient, you've extended grace over and over. But now, the Holy Spirit is whispering something different. It's time. Time to reclaim the energy you've poured into people who never appreciated it. Time to redirect the love you've given others back toward your own healing. Time to understand that protecting your peace is not a betrayal, it's an act of spiritual stewardship. Yes, you're called to love. Yes, you're called to forgive. But you are not called to be a doormat. You are not called to endure disrespect disguised as humility. Jesus didn't tolerate being mocked endlessly just to prove he was kind. He knew when to remain silent. He knew when to withdraw. And he knew when a boundary was no longer a suggestion, but a necessity. The same spirit that empowered Christ to stay aligned with purpose in the face of betrayal is alive in you. And that means you too can discern when someone's presence is no longer a blessing but a burden. When someone's words are no longer correction but corrosion. When their touch no longer brings comfort but a tightening in your chest. Don't ignore these signals. They are sacred. So many of us carry the weight of relationships that expired seasons ago. We nurture memories, not people. We fall in love with potential, not patterns. And we end up losing ourselves in the process. But you were never meant to be lost in someone else's confusion. You were meant to stand in clarity, even if that clarity comes with lonely nights and difficult goodbyes. Sometimes healing requires separation, not forever, not out of hate, but out of holy recognition that space is necessary. Distance is medicine, and the moment you stop filling gaps others refuse to close, you start healing wounds they kept reopening. That's not cruelty, that's courage. It's courageous to say, I love you, but I need to love me more right now. It's bold to say, I forgive you, but I can't give you access again. And it's sacred to say, I'm not angry, but I'm no longer available. That kind of resolve doesn't come from pride, it comes from presence, from standing in the presence of God so long that you finally remember who you are. And who you are is someone worth honoring, someone worth protecting, someone worth defending, not against others, but against the inner voice that says, maybe it's your fault, maybe you could have done more, maybe if you had just... No, that voice is not God. That voice is guilt, dressed in the costume of responsibility. And while responsibility is noble, guilt is not your calling. Your calling is restoration. Your calling is wholeness. Your calling is peace. And peace doesn't require perfection. It just requires honesty. Honesty that says, I'm not okay with being treated like this anymore. Honesty that says, this environment no longer feeds me. Honesty that stands at the door and says, I'm done letting people walk through me. You've spent enough time dimming your light for others. Now it's time to protect it. To guard your heart with intentionality, to surround yourself with people who see you clearly and treat you accordingly. People who don't make you earn respect but give it freely, because that's who they are, not because you had to ask for it. And make no mistake, those people exist. But they're often blocked by the ones you keep holding on to. The ones who say all the right things but do all the wrong ones. The ones who smile with their lips but stab with their silence. Let them go. Release them from the pedestal you placed them on. Not because they're evil, but because you've outgrown the version of yourself that needed their validation. Growth isn't glamorous, it's gritty. It's nights of crying and mornings of clarity. It's walking away not with a shout but with a whisper. I'm done. And in that whisper is the roar of heaven. In that quiet step is the shift of destiny. Because every time you choose peace over pettiness, alignment over approval, faith over fear, heaven celebrates. You were never created to chase after people who constantly misunderstand you. You were created to carry presence, to walk with God's power, and to know, beyond any doubt, that even if everyone else walks away, He remains, He restores, He rebuilds. But He can't rebuild if you keep patching what He already told you to release. You're not abandoning them, you're choosing you. And in choosing you, you're choosing the version of you God always intended, whole, unshaken, and ready for more. The more that comes after you let go, the more that comes when you stop settling, the more that flows when you trust the process of pruning. Pruning doesn't mean you're being punished, it means you're being positioned. Positioned for peace, positioned for purpose, positioned for people who reflect the same respect you've been freely giving. So lift your head, wipe your tears, breathe deep, and take the next step. Not backward, not sideways, but forward, into the clarity, into the calm, into the calling that's been waiting for you to stop playing small and start walking tall. There's a sacred kind of clarity that comes when you finally let go. Not the letting go that's fueled by rage or bitterness, but the kind rooted in peace, the kind that says, I've given enough, I've explained enough, I've endured enough. It's a quiet resolve that settles deep in your spirit, whispering that it's time to stop waiting for them to become someone they never chose to be. And it's in that surrender that you reclaim your strength. Too often, we think surrender means giving up. But in the kingdom of God, surrender is the beginning of alignment. It's the act of handing over the weight you were never meant to carry. You're not responsible for fixing what others refuse to face. You're not obligated to stay in relationships that chip away at your soul. Love doesn't require you to disappear. Forgiveness doesn't demand your silence. And grace doesn't mean subjecting yourself to emotional harm under the banner of spiritual maturity. When God tells you to guard your heart, He's not being dramatic, He's being protective. Your heart is where your life flows from. It's the wellspring of your purpose, your dreams, your worship. And every time you tolerate behavior that dishonors your spirit, you allow toxins to pollute that well. Not overnight, but gradually. A comment here, a dismissal there, an ignored plea, a sarcastic jab. Until one day you wake up and don't recognize the version of you staring back in the mirror. That's not what God wants for you. He doesn't want you bitter, but He also doesn't want you broken. He doesn't want you hard-hearted, but He also doesn't want you emotionally homeless, giving out pieces of yourself with no shelter for your own soul. There's a holy middle ground, a place where compassion meets courage. And in that place, you don't have to choose between being loving and being wise. You can be both. You can say, I love you, and I need space. You can say, I forgive you, but I can't continue this pattern. You can even say, I understand where you're coming from, but I will no longer tolerate being treated this way. That's not selfish. That's spiritual responsibility. You weren't made to be everyone's solution. You weren't designed to absorb everyone's chaos. And you don't have to keep sacrificing your joy for someone else's comfort. Because when you do that, you're not being noble, you're being drained. And eventually you will have nothing left to give. Not to God, not to others, not even to yourself. God's peace is a gift, but like any gift, it must be protected. And protection doesn't always look like confrontation. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like leaving the text unanswered. Sometimes it looks like declining the call. Not from malice, but from maturity. Not from revenge, but from revelation. You've seen enough, you've learned enough, and now you're choosing better. Because the truth is, some people were never meant to go with you into this next season. Not because they're bad, but because they're not aligned. They're still operating in dysfunction, still playing games, still avoiding growth. And if you keep tethering your soul to theirs, you'll stay stuck in a place God already called you out of. You don't have to hate them to release them. You don't have to expose them to heal from them. You just have to decide that your destiny is too important to be delayed by people who refuse to rise. Your future is too sacred to be sacrificed at the altar of someone else's comfort zone. Letting go doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. It means you finally trust God enough to stop forcing what's not bearing fruit. It means you're willing to trade approval for peace, popularity for purpose, validation for vision. And don't be surprised when they don't understand, when they say you're being cold, when they say you've changed. You have. You've grown. And growth always confuses those who are committed to staying the same. Let them talk, let them speculate, but don't let them pull you back. You have work to do, healing to step into, a calling to walk out. And none of that requires their permission. It only requires your decision. So decide today. No more shrinking, no more explaining, no more overextending. You are not a bridge for others to cross while they ignore your boundaries. You are a child of God, and you are worthy of the same respect, love, and kindness that you've so freely given. Walk in that truth, stand in that power, and if they never say thank you, if they never apologize, if they never acknowledge the grace you extended, that's okay. God saw it. God counted every tear, every prayer, every silent night of holding your breath just to keep the peace. And He will honor it. Not always through reconciliation, but always through restoration. He will restore your confidence. He will restore your clarity. He will send people who honor you, not because you begged for it, but because you finally stopped settling for less. So the next time someone disrespects you, remember this. You don't have to respond with fire to prove you've been burned. You don't have to match their chaos to prove your strength. The fact that you chose peace, that's proof enough. The fact that you walked away without slamming the door, that's maturity. The fact that you still pray, still love, still hope, even after everything, that's victory. Because the greatest revenge is not in retaliation. It's in rising, quietly, gracefully, unapologetically. And when you do, the people who once looked down on you will wonder how you became so strong. But you'll know, it wasn't them, it wasn't even you, it was God. breathing life back into your weary soul, giving you beauty for ashes, peace for pain, and purpose for every wound. You've made it this far not because life has been easy, but because you've learned how to stand still in storms that were meant to sweep you away. That quiet strength in you, the one that held your composure while others tested your boundaries, it didn't appear overnight. It was forged in moments when you could have broken, but didn't. In seasons when you were disrespected, overlooked, misunderstood, and still chose not to lose your heart. And maybe now, you're walking through another chapter that demands more silence than speech, more restraint than reaction. That's not punishment, that's preparation. God's preparing you for something bigger than their opinions, something deeper than their approval. And if you can hold on, not just in strength, but in softness, you'll see what that strength was shaping you for. Because this world teaches us to harden, to close up, to fight fire with fire. But God teaches us something radical. Keep your heart clean. That doesn't mean you deny your hurt. It doesn't mean you ignore the disrespect. It means you choose not to let it stain your soul. You grieve it, yes, but you don't become it. That's the real victory. Not walking away with a clever comeback. Not watching them fall while you rise. The real victory is walking away still whole, still kind, still grounded, still soft in a world that tried to make you hard. That kind of wholeness isn't loud. It's not flashy, but it changes everything. Because when you guard your heart, you protect your peace. And when your peace is intact, no insult can destroy your identity. They may never apologize. They may never understand what they did. But your healing is not dependent on their confession. It's dependent on your decision. You get to decide right now that your joy matters, that your clarity matters, that your spirit is too valuable to keep feeding pain with attention. Let them think what they want. You've spent enough time trying to be understood by people who never had the capacity to see you. You don't have to rehearse the pain. You don't have to explain the distance. You don't have to justify your boundaries. Some people will only understand your silence after they've exhausted your voice. Let them learn. Meanwhile, you keep building, keep becoming, keep growing. Not in spite of the disrespect, but because of what it taught you. It taught you to value yourself, to identify what peace actually feels like, to stop tolerating what used to feel normal. That's not trauma, that's transformation. And even now, as you feel the weight of old connections fading, as you sit in the quiet after walking away from the wrong rooms, know this: you haven't lost anything worth keeping. You've only made space for what's real, for what's aligned, for what God had in store all along, but couldn't give you until you let go of what wasn't. This is your season of redefinition, of stepping out of the patterns that kept you stuck, of speaking more to God and less to those who aren't listening, of replacing bitterness with boundaries and resentment with release. It doesn't mean you forget what happened. It just means you refuse to be ruled by it anymore. And yes, healing is lonely sometimes, especially when you've been the strong one for so long. But strength doesn't mean isolation. Strength means honesty. So be honest about what hurts, but also be honest about what you've outgrown. Sometimes we cling to chaos because it's familiar. But God is calling you to a new normal, one where your peace isn't constantly negotiated, one where you don't feel like you have to explain why you deserve basic kindness. You don't have to be perfect to be protected. You just have to be present, with yourself, with God, with the truth. And the truth is, you are worthy of a life that doesn't constantly bruise your spirit. You are worthy of conversations that leave you seen, not silenced, of relationships where you're nourished, not drained. The people who are meant to walk with you in this season, they'll know how to handle you. They won't treat your softness like weakness. They won't need constant reminders to treat you with respect. You won't have to teach them how to be gentle. They'll come gentle. You won't have to beg them to listen. They'll come already tuned in. And until they arrive, be at peace in the silence. There's something sacred happening in your solitude. You're not just walking away from someone, you're walking towards someone else. You. The version of you that's been buried under compromise. The version that doesn't settle. The version that knows she's not difficult, she's discerning. You're not too much. You're not too sensitive. You're just finally refusing to live small. To carry the weight of other people's dysfunction like it's your destiny. That was never your job. Your job is to protect the space inside you where God lives. To honor the voice He gave you. To stand still in the truth that even when the world misunderstands you, heaven doesn't. So breathe. You don't owe anyone a final explanation. You don't need closure to move forward. Sometimes closure isn't a conversation, it's a decision. And today you're deciding to no longer carry what they won't even admit they dropped. Let them wonder. Let them speculate. Let them spin stories to make themselves comfortable. But you rest, you heal, you rise. Quietly, softly, powerfully. Because the deepest kind of strength never needs to prove itself. It just lives. It just walks away with grace. And it never looks back. You've come a long way. Not just in distance, but in depth. Through every heartbreak, every silent cry, every moment you doubted your worth, you chose to keep going. Not because it was easy, but because something inside you, something unshakable, something sacred, refused to let you stay where peace couldn't breathe. And now, as you stand at the threshold of a new chapter, there's no need for revenge. No need to justify your silence. No need to win an argument that was never yours to begin with. You win by walking in truth. You win by protecting your peace. You win by honoring the person you fought so hard to become. Let them think what they will. Let them create their version of your story. But you write the next page with courage, with clarity, with conviction, and above all, with calm. Because true strength isn't loud, it's steady. It doesn't rage, it rises, and it never begs to be seen. It simply shines. So lift your head, not in pride, but in purpose. Know that the same God who carried you through every hidden battle will continue to walk with you into every unknown future. Let His presence be your compass, let His peace be your protection, and let His love be the reason you never have to shrink again. You are not here to be tolerated, you are here to be treasured. Not here to convince others of your value, but to reflect it. Daily, boldly, quietly. And when the world tries to make you question your worth again, smile gently and walk away. Because your soul is no longer for rent, and your peace is no longer up for debate. If this message stirred something in you, I invite you to stay connected. Subscribe to Think Fresh Daily, where every word is rooted in truth, every message speaks to the heart, and every video is created to help you heal, grow, and rise stronger. Because this journey, your journey, is just beginning, and we'll walk it together, one truth at a time.